All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as we look at Matt Miller's player comps for a number of the top 10 players, or a lot of the first round players that he has for the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. But first, let's talk a little bit about Matt Miller of ESPN, their NFL draft guru, says he gave out 12 first-round grades this year. And he basically gave them to Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Jalen Walker, Ashton Gianti, Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, Tyler Warren, Jedi Barron, Colston Loveland, and Mikael Williams. And then he went and gave a player comp to these guys. Now, he only had 12 first-round grades. The Niners, of course, pick 11th overall. So you would think that they would probably draft one of the guys on this guy's board of the 12 best players, because there's also going to be a couple quarterbacks potentially in the mix here that could push some of these guys down. And so the 49ers almost assuredly are going to have a look at somebody in Matt Miller's top 12 or multiple somebodies in their top 12. And it'll be interesting to see the way the Niners play their hand of cards on draft day. Do they stay where they're at? Do they trade up? Do they trade back? What will be their game plan? But I thought some of the comps are interesting, and we could talk about them. One, he's got some that are just on the money. Some that are on the money, and then just some that are way off base, I think. Okay, let's talk about the ones that are on the money. He compares Abdul Carter, the edge rusher, to Micah Parsons. And I think Parsons has a little bit more strength. I think he has a little bit more speed. I think he's a little bit better athlete than Abdul Carter, but I think it's a great comparison. Both guys can rush the passer. Both guys really, really deadly off the edge. Both guys could play as a stack backer if you really needed him to, and you could move this guy around. I think Abdul Carter is an awful lot like Micah Parsons. To me, not just they went to the same school, but they're similar size, and Carter's maybe a little longer, Parsons maybe a little heavier, but they're both destructive as hell. So I love that one. I think that's a absolutely on the money comparison. The other on the money comparisons, I thought Mason Graham being like Justin, I guess he's now changed his first name to Nnamdi Madubuike, the Ravens defensive tackle, former A&M star. And Madubuike just is so physical and smart that he's both, right? He's such a good football player because he's physically a dominant player, but he's also mentally a dominant player. And you put him out on the field, he just wins and wins and wins and wins. And he's one of the reasons the Ravens are the Ravens. And Mason Graham, I thought that was a great comparison because I was trying to think, who is Mason Graham? Justin Smith is a good comparison, but he's got longer arms than Justin Smith. He's a naturally heavier guy. Justin Smith played at 295 at his highest, I believe. This guy goes about 320. This guy's built a little different. The Cowboy had shorter arms than Mason Graham. Graham's a little bit more of a leverage player. Maybe not the badass that Justin Smith was, but a little bit more of a leverage player who just seems like he's harder to block. If that can, and both guys, what they have in common is they both play incredibly hard and are very smart and are very good technicians. So I compare him to Justin Smith, but Nnamdi Madubuike is a great comp as well, and I think that's spot on. Okay, so some of the other ones are interesting. I thought Kelvin Banks as Rashawn Slater is pretty dead on. Rashawn Slater doesn't have huge height, but he was just a really solid guy who keeps his body, keeps you at arm's length, keeps you at the end of his jab, so to speak. And he's got good arm length and good athleticism and a solid base, and he's well coached. So I see a lot of Kelvin Banks and Rashawn Slater. And if Banks Jr. from Texas can be Rashawn Slater, that's going to be really good. The other one that I thought was spot on is Tyler Warren, Rob Gronkowski. Gronkowski was big, rangy, could do a lot of things, and yet there was kind of a stiffness a little bit about some of his movements. And Tyler Warren is exactly the same. He's a strong inline blocker, but he's also fast. He's played wildcat quarterback. He's really smart. He's a good route runner. That one I thought was right on the money. The other one I thought was right on the money is the Colston Loveland comparison to Trey McBride. Um, I see that as totally spot on. McBride, Loveland might be a little bit more like Travis Kelsey as far as he's a little leaner and maybe not quite as muscle bound as McBride, but both of them are just outstanding, prolific receivers that can win with quickness. They can win with strength. They've got great hand-eye coordination. Loveland, I think, is a little bit more of a vertical threat than McBride. McBride might be a little bit more of a dependable, chain mover in the short and intermediate than Loveland. But I see a very productive, consistently productive receiver like we see with Trey McBride. He's one of the best receiving tight ends in football. I think Colston Loveland is almost a lock if he stays healthy to be one of the great receiving tight ends in pro football. So I think that's a great comparison. And the last great comparison is Mikael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia, to Trayvon Walker. Now, people forget maybe that Trayvon Walker went number one. He went number one in the draft. Trent Baalke took him over Aiden Hutchinson. And the reason for it is Trayvon Walker is a physical freak. 270 pounds, runs in the 4.5s, maybe even a little bit bigger than that, maybe closer to 280. But both Trayvon Walker was just – he at that size, he had movement ability that was crazy. And Mikael Williams is in a very similar vein. He's like the first guy off the bus. I mean, he really looks the part. He's super shredded, 6'4", 265 pounds. He looks like, they say, this is what they're supposed to look like. Well, you know what? If you're looking for a big-time NFL defensive end prospect, Mikael Williams passes the eyeball test as soon as he walks through the room. But like Trayvon Walker, they both give you that vibe that they can do anything at any time. And then at the end of the game, you're like, did they get a lot done? I kind of feel like Mikael Williams looks great, but I don't know that he, I saw Jalon Walker makes far more plays for Georgia than I saw Mikael Williams make. Trayvon Walker is going to have a good NFL career. I think Mikael Williams is going to have a good NFL career. But they're thought of as like they get overdrafted based on their physical gifts, and I don't think the production and the motor and all of it's all there. So I wasn't a huge fan of Trayvon Walker, despite the obvious physical gifts and an amazing talent and movement ability at that size. But I just thought, you know what? He's not going to be a bust. He's too athletic to be a bust. But is he going to be a great player, or is he going to be a player that has a good career and maybe one great year? And that's kind of what I see with Trayvon Walker and Mikael Williams. They're not going to have great careers. They're going to have okay careers. They're going to have long careers with maybe one great year. But the consistency just isn't there. All right, so those are the really good comps. Where were the bad comps? Okay, Travis Hunter, first of all, I don't think Travis Hunter is going to play wide receiver in the NFL. I think Travis Hunter is going to play corner. I'm pretty sure he's going to go to the combine and test as a corner. To compare him to Odell Beckham Jr., who has some of the greatest ball skills. I mean, he's got like Chris Carter-like hands and just really rare ball skills. I mean, Odell Beckham, even when he couldn't run, the Rams still wanted him as a possession receiver, and he still made big plays in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl as a Ram. Teams always are going to look at him because you can throw it to him in a crowd. He will catch it because he's got, off the charts ball skills, huge hands. He'll catch it in a crowd. He'll take a lick. He'll hold on. Travis Hunter is a corner. I think he's a long corner, kind of like a Jalen Ramsey with a little bit better speed. I don't see him as a receiver at the NFL level. I think he's a corner, so I don't like that comparison. I mean, if you want to compare him to a corner, but don't compare him to a receiver who's got just super rare ball skills. The other one I don't love particularly is Jalon Walker and Harold Landry. I think Harold Landry was strictly an edge rusher. I don't think he has the ability to play as a weak side backer or middle backer. I think Jalon Walker is more like Quay Walker from Green Bay, where he's just a crazy athlete and he can play edge if you need him because he's a great athlete and he can beat tackles off the snap, and he can get parallel to the line to the ground, and he's really, really dangerous off the edge. But I think he's more of a stack backer. I think he's more of an inside linebacker. I think in the pros, if he's going to be a truly great player, I mean, he won the Butkus Award for being the top linebacker in the country. He closes down and breaks down space better than almost anybody. He's so fast and instinctive and breaks down so consistently well in space. I just see more of a stacked backer. Harold Landry III is an edge rusher. He's a defensive end. He might be an undersized defensive end, but he is a defensive end. I think Jalen Walker has way more tricks in his bag than that. I think Jalen Walker could be a Pro Bowl linebacker. I think he could be an elite second level stacked backer at the mic or the will or even a strong side backer. I think he could play all three linebacker spots and be an incredible delayed blitzer. So I don't love that comp of Harold Landry III. Ashton Gianti being compared to Alvin Kamara. I just think Kamara is so much like a minor league Barry Sanders. He's so Gumby. Like he can bend this way, he can bend that way. He's got the stop and start. I don't see Gianti as quite. I don't see him quite like that. And it's like I don't really know exactly who I want to compare him to. To me, he's maybe a little bit faster version of Emmitt Smith. I think he's got really good instincts. I think he's got really good power at the point of contact. He's got great contact balance. He's incredibly productive. I think he can run between the tackles. He can run outside the tackles. He's tough. He's strong, like Emmitt. I think but he might be a little bit more explosive than Emmitt. Maybe a tiny bit more explosive. Emmitt Smith, I think, is a way better comparison than Alvin Kamara. Just my opinion. The other one that I was like, I don't know about that is, Jahdae Barron from Texas being compared to Brian Branch. I just see Branch as he's just violent and he's a hard hitter and he just really comes up with huge plays and he's such a violent player. I look at Brian Branch almost like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but with better coverage ability. I didn't see any of that violence from Barron. Now, he's big, he's rangy, he was the Thorpe Award winner, he's productive, he makes plays against the run, he's physical. I'm not saying that he's not. Just Branch to me was more of a playmaker and plays angrier. And I just didn't see that physical. I didn't see the same level of physicality and violence that I see from Brian Branch with Jahdae Barron. But I'll watch him again because I probably need to watch him again. The other one that I thought was a little bit of a stretch to say that Will Johnson out of Michigan is Patrick Surtain. I mean, Surtain was the defensive player of the year this year. He's an incredible player. I mean, he was totally dominant his entire time at Alabama. Will Johnson, granted, was hurt a lot this year, did not play, and maybe this is why I don't see the comp there. But to me, he's more linear. He's not quite as powerful of a hitter. I don't think he's quite the same coverage player. I don't see that kind of tenacity. Surtain, daddy played in the league, and he was great. And so I just feel like Surtain is so advanced. And I just think to say that Will Johnson is Surtain the second, I don't know. I don't know. I would say no. It's just a hunch, but I would say no. I won't try to jump in on Will Campbell compared to Deion Dawkins. I love Deion Dawkins. I thought he had a tremendous year for Buffalo this year. I don't see Will Campbell as a Deion Dawkins. I see him as maybe even like a Tony Baselli. Now, Baselli is a Hall of Famer. So, but I just see a big, long, rangy, dominant, long-armed, blue chip, guy who's going to play 10, 12 years in the NFL. I mean, Baselli was Hall of Fame for a reason. This guy, Baselli, maybe a little bit more powerful, a little quicker. But Will Campbell, to me, is kind of built along those lines. He's tall, he's got long arms, powerful, great film, super blue chipper. He's kind of a Baselli. I think by the time draft day rolls around, Will Campbell is going to go way high. I think he's going to go way high, like maybe in the top 6 or 7. They've got him, Matt Miller has him 7th overall of his 12 first-rounders. And the one where I think they really kind of screwed it up because Matt Miller only gave out 12 first-round grades this year. Um, so to me, the guy who absolutely had to get a first round grade, who did not get a first round grade, is Kenneth Grant. Um, did you watch Michigan and Ohio State? I mean, Kenneth Grant was just monster in that game. To me, that means a lot. If you play big, if you're a great Michigan player, you better play big against the Buckeyes. If you're a great Ohio State player, you better play great against Michigan. That's why I kind of like Mullings, and I'm not as crazy a little bit about Travion and and I I really do love Quinshon Judkins, but they didn't have great games against Michigan. They really didn't. And Mullings did. And Kenneth Grant really did. He's 6'3, 340 plus pounds, and he's way better than Mozzie Smith. And I thought, yeah, he played next to a instructional video on how to play the position in Mason Graham, who outshined him. But I mean, this is a big boy who can really, really move. Really special player, I think. I mean, you just don't see guys 6'3", 340 who move like this guy does. Now, he's got to be coached up a little bit, but I really, really love the upside of Kenneth Grant. And, this kid is got, just a ready-made frame. I mean, he's ready to step in and be and what I love about him, he's got the two-gap body, but he has the ability to rush the passer as just a huge behemoth. So I just think that you look at Jordan Davis for the Eagles, and it took him a year, right? It took Jordan Davis a year before he really kind of shook off the body fat, learned what he was doing, got in a scheme that he really understood what the defense coordinator, Vic Fangio, wanted from him. It took him a couple years to figure it out. It really did. But now look what they got. They got just a massive inside player who commands doubles, who can move his feet, who can split doubles and frees up the rest of their line. The Milton Williamses of the world on that line are freed up to go hunt the quarterback because you got, a gigantic behemoth there in the middle. And I think Kenneth Grant could be the same thing for the Niners. Kenneth Grant could be the Jordan Davis for the Niners. But I think he's even better than Jordan Davis. I think he's a tougher guy naturally. I think he's faster than Jordan Davis. I think he's better in pursuit. Go watch that Buckeyes-Michigan game and tell me that Kenneth Grant is not a first-round draft choice. It was the biggest, most dominant player on the field. He's from Gary, Indiana. I went to Merrillville High School. And, yes, he's been outshined next to Mason Graham. But the way he played against the Buckeyes – he had 4 tackles. He had a TFL. He was super active. And I just think that when you're 6'3", 340, move the way that he does, and had a productive day against your biggest opponent, and really showed up in that game. Yeah, I mean, to me, he's going in the first round. Both these guys are going in the first round. Mason Graham's going at the top of the first round. Maybe Kenneth Grant's going towards the bottom of the first round, but he's going in the first round. I'm very confident in saying that. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show.